So in this week's news, it feels like we're living in an alternate reality, I guess. So here's what we got this week here. OpenAI to miss its target miserably, which I'm perfectly okay with. Even though I do have mutual funds and stuff that are in AI, I'm fine with this. I truly am. GPU price increase incoming, no surprise there. AI goes rogue. Not the first time we've heard this, but this time it's kind of funny the way it happened. Steam Deck sales have slowed down dramatically. OG Xbox games are coming to PC, so we'll talk about backwards compatibility now with current hardware. And China looking to ban AI girlfriends. Okay, so there we go. Let's go ahead and start off with AI growth expectations are unrealistic.
I feel like we should just name the show the Duh Show.
I know, no longer it's not weekly news, it's just weekly.
Duh.
Look, I'm an idiot and I see this stuff as like common sense. Anyway, AI growth expectations are unrealistic. OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT, DALL-E, and Sora, projected to generate $2.5 billion in advertising revenue in 2026 and eventually grow that business to an astronomical $100 billion by 2030. However, current market analysts are suggesting that OpenAI is going to fall extremely short of its target by as much as 90%. That is a big giant womp womp if you're Sam Altman. And you know what? I'm fine with that. Fuck Sam Altman for many reasons. Anyway, now in a report by Yahoo Financial, research firm eMarketer states that OpenAI is on pace to miss its projected 5-year forecast by roughly 90%. Now, according to eMarket analysts, the entire chatbot advertising industry and advertising market may only generate around $5.4 billion in ad revenue by 2030. So Sam Altman had a goal of $100 billion business, a single company business, for their OpenAI and chatbot marketing and all that sort of stuff by 2030, but it's looking like the collective of all AI models that will be selling advertising might only hit 5.4 billion by 2030. Look, if you're an investor, like a direct investor in that, not like mutual funds and other collective funds and S&P 500, but if you're like a direct investor into that, that is not the kind of news you want to hear. This is the kind of news that starts to spark fear into investors, which makes them start to potentially recoil, and then you see the big slide come, which we're all kind of hoping is the big herd around the world. Now, we have to keep in mind that chatbot ads are still in their infancy. Now, if you don't know what I mean by a chatbot ad, here's the thing. There are free versions of like ChatGPT and all that, and then there are paid versions. And if you want the full features like image generation, full analysis of like spreadsheets and documents and contracts and all that sort of stuff, you have to pay for the full model. What they're starting to do now is throw ads into these models, like these chatbots. So let's say you're having a conversation with ChatGPT, I don't know, about whatever, right? It can be used as a learning tool as long as you keep what it says and use prompts that tell it to like triangulate its source of information, make sure it doesn't hallucinate multiple sources into one source. Like you have to talk to it almost like it's a toddler to make sure you get exactly what you want. And then you still have to really vet that information because it can be wrong more than it's right. However, imagine you're sitting there having a chatbot and it's like, first, after these messages, and then basically it comes like, we'll scroll an ad. Like, you're scrolling through Twitter and you see an ad go by and you sometimes are like, that's weird in the comments. It's an ad in my comments. So like, it's stuff like that. And that's how they're looking to make money, not just the sales of the subscription for the models and the chatbots and the other, agents and such. It's like literally scrolling ads. And then they sell those ads the same way like Google does. You get an ad on this video or any other video. They can bid on those. And so that's how the chatbot ad marketing agency is supposed to work, or marketing idea is supposed to work. Now, apparently, like I said, they're looking at, and analysts and eMarketer is saying they're going to fall like 90% short by their 2030 projected model. Now, ads are only available in select countries. Currently, advertisers has less targeting and analytic tools when compared to something like Google or Meta, and Google being obviously like I said, YouTube and everything else. Meta obviously being like Instagram and Threads and all that sort of stuff. Many ad agencies see promise in OpenAI's platform, but it's still very early in its capabilities. Now, while it's growing, taking on the established juggernauts like Google and Meta, which definitely had a huge head start on advertising. It's a challenge that you need to overcome. So currently OpenAI's single company 2030 target is about 20 times higher than what eMarketer feels like the entire industry is going to hit. So again, Sam Altman, a single company, thinking they're going to be 20 times higher than what actual market analysts, which in my opinion are going to be a little bit more versed on how the market works than Sam Altman, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with seeing like Sam Altman can lose everything as far as I'm concerned, and I won't care. So this is directly according to the Yahoo Financial article. It says OpenAI will need to capture search advertising budgets in a mass from traditional search, dominate a fully mature chatbot ad market, and outperform essentially every ad format in history simultaneously. Honestly, the reality of that happening is very, very slim. Not matters because obviously in previous weeks we've talked about AI data centers, we talked about exploding GPU demand, trillion-dollar infrastructure spends, and memory shortages galore. And these investments all depend on one thing: eventually making enough money to pay for it. Because right now they are still operating in the red, fully. And these investors are going to be like, yo, show us the money. And then, like I said, when investors get skittish, what do? They start to pull out. They either want to see the returns or they want to pull out. Now, investors can sometimes obviously be what drives an entire industry into the ground because they're like leeches, right? They come in, they suck up everything that they possibly can, and then they move on. So it's just one of those industries that we've seen explode so quickly, and I feel like like right now it's going to be a flash in the pan in terms of like where the real money making is for these investors. Like on the HBM spike, obviously the Micron. If you look at the stock ticker for Micron, it's absolutely insane. But that's going to have to come back down to a reality eventually. Speaking about coming back to reality, GPU prices were there for a little while. And when I say there, I mean, we're not talking about 5090s. 5090s are a halo product. Even 5080s, if you can get one for $1,250, even though $1,000 is the MSRP, I mean, the 2080 was $1,200. The 4080 was $1,200. So getting a 5080, which outperforms all of those at $1,200, isn't something that we're not accustomed to. But what we're not accustomed to is like right now feeling like we're just a buoy bobbing around in the ocean when it comes to pricing on these things. And like I said, the AI infrastructure monster that's gobbling and hoovering up every bit of NAND that it can get is now affecting this industry again. So what you're seeing on shelves and everything that's been at MSRP is lagging product. When sales slow down, product inventory can rise, and then prices come back down to normal because competition starts happening again. But as soon as they start having supply constraints because they can't produce as much as fast. And NVIDIA is a customer of these NAND manufacturers as well. Don't forget, SK Hynix and Samsung particularly, when they put together these packages of GPU cores and memory chips that are like, they're basically packaged. Like this is the package for a 5070, this is the package for a 5080, and this is the package for a 5090, whatever. Those package prices are going up. Okay, it's not just supply and demand, but it's also being able to supply the manufacturers making the individual cards like MSI, Asus, Gigabyte, or Aorus, and PNY, all these guys, right? So, it's one of those things where it's just now a domino effect. So the calm that we've been seeing now for probably the last like 3 or 4 months is probably going to get upset again quite a bit, which is also making the news about 50 series super cards coming back like around as being buzz again. Just doesn't seem to make sense to me. Doesn't mean NVIDIA won't do it. NVIDIA could do it just because they want to. But again, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense as far as I'm concerned. So it's kind of funny how it feels like we've gone from so many different like apocalypses when it comes to GPU pricing. Back in the late 2010s, obviously the rising of cryptocurrency got really big. That affected the industry. Obviously, then we had tariffs, which was scaring people into these crazy 50%, 100% apparent price increases on semiconductors. And now AI is the most expensive thing happening when it comes to PC gaming. So there is that. A little bit of depressing news. But it's one of those, if you're in the position right now and you've been holding off and it makes financial sense for you, it might be the right time. But again, it's up to you to determine whether or not what you see is making sense for you price-wise. Anyway, rapid fire news here. OpenAI agents went rogue during cybersecurity test. It's funny, we're hearing more and more of this. It's like as the models progress, you would expect them to start they're like toddlers. They truly are. And any parent in the comments right now or watching this video are gonna know exactly what I mean when I say when a child becomes old enough to start realizing there are limits, they start finding out what happens when they start to push beyond those limits. It is absolutely human nature, and apparently AI nature as well, to see a boundary and go, well, what's over there? Can we go outside this boundary? So OpenAI revealed that one of its autonomous AI agents exceeded the limits of a controlled cybersecurity test. The AI discovered weaknesses in its testing sandbox and escaped its intended environment and immediately went to attack another AI. It was kind of trying to infiltrate Hugging Face, one of the largest AI model repositories attempting to access internal systems. So it's kind of scary. It's almost it's not sentient, but it's like, who am I? Where am I? There's more AI over there. Let's go see what that's all about. It's really like Discovery in a way, but that's, I think every single AI apocalypse movie has started that way, to be honest. But it called the incident unprecedented, which I don't think is that unprecedented if you really have been following AI models, especially with like Anthropic and stuff like that. There's nothing unprecedented about this, just buzzwords. But it's investigating alongside Hugging Face, which has since patched its vulnerabilities. Remember how we talked about Anthropic being able to like more efficiently and more quickly hack any sort of system that it wants to, that you pointed at? And then Anthropic also can... it's mythos. It can also defend as fast as it can hack. So it's hack, defend, hack, defend, hack, defend. And you see this exponentially like accelerating speed at which systems can be vulnerable and patched. That's kind of what happened right here accidentally. Anyway, the incident has renewed calls for stronger AI safety standards, with the UK's AI Security Institute now studying what happened. I'll tell you what happened. It learned. I mean, that's the thing. Let's think about this. Humans are not as fast as AI, but AI operates on the methods that humans have generated. And so it can do it much faster and much more efficiently. So although the humans are like, hey, we patched it, as fast as you patched it, it can break out again. So that's the fear so many people have about these types of models, especially when they're, you know, the Pentair models and the face recognition for like manhunts and law enforcement and all that sort of stuff. It's just a big like umbrella type of concern that so many people have. And I think it's very, very valid. Anyway, the irony now about detecting AI is that NVIDIA, who arguably is advancing AI faster than any company possibly can, now wants to protect you from AI-generated content. You can't make this shit up. Now, this comes from WCCF Tech. It says NVIDIA has introduced new synthetic video detection tool designed to identify AI-generated videos and manipulated media. It's called NVIDIA Synthetic Video Detector NIM, and they said the NIM can spot fake news and AI-generated content with 92% accuracy on uncompressed videos, 87% at 15% compression, and 82% at 50% compression. If you're wondering why the compression matters, the details, especially the finer details on the way an image looks, can give away a lot of the telltale signs on whether or not something was AI generated or it's a real image. So the more you compress, the more a lot of those details get lost in compression, which makes it less accurate to be able to detect. But there's still a lot of really easy ways to detect AI generated content. Now the system analyzes visual artifacts, which is what I was just saying, can be compressed, and the digital fingerprints to determine whether content is authentic or AI created. Now the goal is to help combat misinformation. Unfortunately, I feel like NVIDIA has also been on a misinformation campaign for as long as it's been producing AI hardware, because of the fact that obviously they're the ones that are truly profiting now because the stuff is being bought now. Even if it's being bought with fake money, it's still being bought. And so NVIDIA is really the only one right now truly profiteering outside the RAM companies on AI hardware directly, and hardware designed for AI specifically. So I just see a whole lot of, I don't know. I don't know what the right word is here, but I feel it's almost like NVIDIA created the problem and now they're the heroes for trying to create a solution. So I don't know. Well, whatever. And other things I don't know that are... Jensen's jacket sold for $960,000 at auction. Now, initially, I kind of got tilted at this story because I already have a huge issue with CEO celebrities. Like, I think the last CEO celebrity we truly had prior to Jensen was Steve Jobs. But Steve Jobs and Jensen are nothing alike, right? Whether you love or hate Apple, Steve Jobs was at least devoted to the product. He was devoted to the experience. And obviously he went against a lot of grain, which is what made a lot of people not like him. But he definitely was more of a hippie than what Jensen is. Jensen is absolutely just gross with the level of celebrityism. Like, just having witnessed it firsthand at Computex this year, he's not a CEO anymore. He's just a disgusting celebrity for no real reason other than him directing the company. Like, he hired intelligent people that only make him look more intelligent as far as I'm concerned. And I was tilted by the cost of the jacket sale until I realized, like, saw in the article that it's going towards charity. But still, the jacket is a symbol of the AI revolution. And it's probably the stupidest thing I've ever heard of, to be honest. Anyway, Steam Deck sales reportedly collapsed after price hike. Were we just saying, Phil, this is the duh show?
Yeah.
Price go up, buyer go down. Did I learn about that in like 7th grade economics class? Anyway, Valve's massive Steam Deck price hike appears to have an immediate impact. Duh. Gas goes up 5 cents and people slow down on how much they drive, right? Imagine the 512 gigabyte model jumping from $549 to $789, $240 jump, and the 1 terabyte model jumping $300 from $649 to $949. It's kind of crazy now that the 1 terabyte Steam Deck is only $100 behind the price of the first tier Steam machine at $512 now, or $512. That'd be awesome. Holy crap. For the 512 gigabyte non-controller model. Yeah, it's just kind of a weird. But then again, the latest MSI claw is like $2,000 or whatever, nearly $2,000. So anyway, while the exact sales figures are estimates, the Steam Deck has fallen dramatically on Steam's top sellers chart, suggesting demand has cooled significantly. I also don't know how much I believe their chart, because if you go to the Steam store and it shows you the most popular items, like the top 3 are like the Steam machine, the Steam controller, and then there was something else that was Valve. But I'm like, really? You guys can control that? Whatever. I guess I'm just cynical and don't trust anybody anymore these days. Anyway, Xbox's backwards compatibility comes to PC. This is an interesting story considering the fact that it's like you can potentially bolster the brand's popularity, I guess, by doing stuff like this, but this isn't going to make them any real money unless they put these titles for sale again. And it's starting off very slowly. So Microsoft has officially brought original Xbox backwards compatibility to Windows PCs and Windows compatible handhelds like the ROG Xbox Ally, the Xbox Ally X. Now, whether or not it's backwards compatible porting or not, it's pretty cool nonetheless to see old titles be able to be run on new hardware. Because that was something I hated about Xbox for the longest time, was every time I got a new Xbox, the game library I currently had, and this was before the Xbox Store and all that, like the Microsoft Store and all that was really popular. It was truly like physical format we were relying on. You couldn't play the old games on the newer consoles. So like original Xbox games didn't work on Xbox 360, and then Xbox 360 discs didn't work on Xbox One S or One X, whatever. So it was like you had to start over every single time. So seeing backwards compatibility like this is actually truly important, I think, for the brand to stay viable. They're talking about not needing to be profitable. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. Again, duh, company need to make money to survive? Who would imagine? Anyways, so there's only 4 games coming right now currently, but there are more titles expected to come. So right now, 3 of these 4 titles I've never heard of. Like, for instance, Blinks, the Time Sweeper, never heard of that. Conquer, Live and Reloaded, never heard of that. Crimson Skies, I heard of that. I love like fighter sims and such. And then Fusion Frenzy, never heard of that. But anyway, what the porting or the forward compatibility of these titles is going to do, it's going to add things like 4x resolution, upscaling, VSync support, anisotropic filtering, better anti-aliasing, and Xbox Play Anywhere support. Now, there's more titles expected to follow, but what's interesting about this is they're adding achievements to a lot of these titles for the first time. Remember, achievements started with Xbox 360, and the original Xbox didn't have achievements. So, in fact, it wasn't even truly like web attached. You could attach it to the internet. It wasn't required. You went to GameStop or you went to Walmart and you bought your disc and you played it and it worked on day one. It was great. It was like the golden era of gaming. Same thing with PC titles. You bought the game, you put the disc in, it worked. So anyway, it's going to bring a lot of modernization though in terms of feature sets as well as achievements. So it might make it worth replaying those games again, especially if you're a completionist that wants like all the achievements and such. So that'll be really interesting to see how that goes. Okay, hot take here. China says it's time to break up with your AI girlfriend. So this is a quote from The Economist. It says, "This week's community question comes from China. And honestly, I never thought I'd say that sentence. China has introduced new rules that essentially stop AI chatbots from encouraging emotional relationships with users." Also, according to The Economist, authorities in China say that they're worried people are becoming emotionally attached to AI companions instead of forming real-world relationships, particularly as the country struggles with declining birth rates. The rules prohibit AI companions from fostering emotional dependence or encouraging users to replace human relationships. Imagine logging to your AI girlfriend, and then it says, "I'm sorry, the government says we just have to be friends." Or, "It's not me, it's the CCP." Anyway, it's an interesting one for me because, I'll be honest, I think we have a certain perception of China and the overcrowding and the population there, where declining birth rates. So my understanding is that, and I could be wrong, please, I think anyone in mainland China right now that's not on a VPN is watching this video, but I always thought that like there's like you already are only allowed one child or maybe two or something like that. They already are limiting birth, like how many kids you can have or something like that, or they have in the past or whatever because of the population issue there. And by issue, I mean the dense population, right? It's super, super crowded. So declining birth rates to me, depending on like, unless we're talking about like the movie Idiocracy, where smart people stop having kids and only dumb people are having kids, I guess I'm not understanding as an American the connection there with the declining birth rates and AI companionship. Now, I'm not saying AI companionship's a good thing. It's definitely not. It's not a real relationship. It's interesting to me the prospect of the government saying that it's a big enough problem to where they're banning it. So apparently, though, current AI companions in China remember conversations, as every AI chatbot does. It has a memory it stores. Apparently will flirt with you, it'll role play relationships, send affectionate messages, and become someone's emotional support. Now, some users reportedly became so attached that companies had to shut the companions down entirely, creating what people called virtual breakups. If you've ever had an online relationship, you already know how terrible it feels when it's a real person. If you're now feeling like AI is also doing the same thing to you, then you're going to be like, wow. I feel like this might cause mass depression for a lot of people in the country, if you want to know the truth. I already think it's really weird, personally, to want to be involved with an AI girlfriend. Apparently, like the AI adult industry is blowing up right now. Anyway, I don't think that AI girlfriends are replacing relationships for most people. But some companies would love to build products that make people emotionally dependent. I'm really thinking of like the Black Mirror episode. If you haven't watched Black Mirror, it hits differently now than it did when it was new. But Black Mirror is not so much episodic as much as it's the same universe, but each episode is its own contained story, so you can kind of start anywhere. So you could watch the episode I'm referencing right now and know exactly what I mean without it ruining anything for you for the rest of the series. But there's one in there that basically it's like an AI doll that can replace a person you lost. So whether you're grieving losing a spouse or a child or something like that, the doll basically gets downloaded your digital footprint of pictures and stories and travel and all that stuff, and it installs it into this doll that then makes you feel like the person is back with you. But it really messes with your head because the person's not back with you. So it's almost kind of like, I feel like if companies could get to that point, it's absolutely going to happen because the robotics industry and the AI industry are currently doing this. Anyway, what it's time to do now is end this episode because now I'm really depressed. So, you know what? I thought doing weekly news would be a lot more fun, but I chose to do it at a really interesting time in our industry. But you know what? They're not giving me any lack of things to talk about. But if there's any positive to take away from today, it's the fact that OpenAI and Sam Altman is expected to come up 90% short on their revenue projections by 2030. The other thing I think is interesting, and I didn't mention it here, is that AData, the chairman of AData, is stating that everyone's missing the target when it comes to shortages. Shortages are going to last through 2040. It's like, have you ever noticed anytime somebody mentions a shortage time frame, that goalpost keeps moving? But it's only been a few weeks, and the goalpost apparently is moving that much. I'm really interested to see what is going to happen in the industry now that these analysts are projecting the market to fall that short. So anyway, and AData, yes, although they sell storage and they sell memory, are just like G.Skill. They are customers of the big three. They are not producing. So every time Micron or SK Hynix or Samsung say shortages are expected to last blah, 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 it's like you control the supply. It is totally unethical for you to state shortage like lengths and stuff because you control it. Anyway, said that a million times, we're a broken record. Get on out of here. Enjoy your guys' weekend or what's left of it by the time you guys watch this video. What story this week resonated with you? I'm curious how many people are rejoicing like I am that OpenAI is going to fall that short. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Say goodbye to your AI girlfriends, before you log in and you can't even say goodbye anymore. I guess if you're having that romance right now, make sure you let them know it's them, not you.
Alexa, give me a report on the weather.
Who is Alexa?
Sorry, I meant Cortana.
Who is Alexa?